Thank you for joining us this evening for the Artists Exchange, a group created by and for artists to share new work, ideas, resources, and opportunities monthly over a glass of wine or tea as you prefer. I'm drinking water tonight. So grab your beverage and join us as we discover the work of two renowned Bay Area artists whose works capture the journey they've been on for so many years. I'm going to let someone in. Elizabeth Sher and Mary Curtis Ratcliff. I'm Shelley Rugg, the Executive Director at Gallery Route 1. And for our presentation today, we ask that you please stay muted unless we ask you to unmute. For best viewing, select Speaker View from the top right corner of the Zoom viewing screen. We want you to know that we are recording today's presentation for future viewing on our website and YouTube channel. And we want you to all subscribe to our YouTube channel when you visit. Now, please join me in welcoming our host, Pamela Blotner, an East Bay artist whose sculpture and drawings reflect on humankind's relationship to wildlife, climate change, calamity, and healing. Her early experiences as an artist at the Houston Zoo set her creative course and continues to influence her aesthetic. Blotner's art has been exhibited in Europe, Asia, Africa, and throughout the United States. She has taught at a number of universities, including the University of San Francisco and the San Francisco Art Institute. For several years, she taught sculpture at Pixar Animation Studios. And in 2017, she was appointed a U.S. Arts Envoy to Burma. Welcome, Pamela.
Thank you, Shelley, and thank you to our guests. It's lovely to have you here tonight. Okay, as Shelley said, Elizabeth Sher and Mary Curtis Ratcliff are both renowned Bay Area artists, and their work is known for its variety, its complexity, and often for its subtle sense of humor. So first, I would like to introduce Elizabeth, and we have our visiting artist, our guest artist, arm wrestle to see who goes first, and this time Elizabeth won. So Elizabeth is a San Francisco Bay artist and a CCA professor emerita. She's known for her drawings, her paintings, and her artist books in both analog and in digital media. She may be best known, though, for her documentary films about women, aging, and health. To quote artist and writer Amelia Mesa Baines, or quote, Sher's documentaries create that special mix of common sense, irony, and the human insight that inspires us to talk more, laugh a lot, and trust each other. Okay. Her artwork is internationally exhibited and appears in numerous public collections, such as the San Francisco Museum of Art and the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Rim Archive. So, welcome, Elizabeth Sher.
Thank you. I have a couple of disclaimers. I have been really sick with a chest cold and I sound quite nasal, and I'm just hoping I don't have a coughing fit in the middle of this. I'm also going to read, but I'll try to remember to look over and say hi to you guys while I'm reading. So I want to thank Pamela and Shelley for inviting me to be part of the Artist Exchange. It's really an honor. And I'm also excited to be on with Mary Curtis, who I've known for so many years. And in many ways, our art has kind of followed parallel lines. So I think young women today know a lot more than we did, or certainly I did. And we didn't know anything. And we kind of had to make our own way. And I never heard the word sexist or feminist. I just thought
I wasn't working hard enough, and I just had to work harder and things would work out. First slide. Shelley, first slide. Yeah, here we go. So this is the portrait of the artist as a woman artist. And it's drawing and acrylic on paper. I found it really hard to be able to compress over 5 decades of art making into a short presentation, especially because I work in so many mediums. I love process and working with the edge of what is possible for me to create using the tools and the budget at my disposal. So here's my website and my Instagram page, and you can visit me there or on my Wikipedia page. As Shelley mentioned, my subject matter in printmaking, mixed media, installation, artist books, and film video has always been about art, women, health, and aging. So this sounds so chaotic, but I finally decided that just like a musician can make different albums, like Linda Ronstadt, she made Latin, she made standard, she did all these things. So that's how I think of my art. We always know it's Linda Ronstadt, and I hope you always know that it's me. Next slide. These early oil paintings were done when I transferred from Smith College, a women's college in the East, to Cal Berkeley. The Bay Area figurative style was what was happening. And I had one mentor, the painter Elmer Bischoff. The rest of them couldn't understand why I wasn't interested in sleeping with them. I never had a woman teacher. So when I look at these paintings, I think of 2 things. The first one was I was told you cannot combine geometric shapes with the figure. And the second thing is I realized that way back then, I was trying to break out, although I didn't know of what. Next slide. I graduated from Cal and I went back to Washington, D.C., where I was from. And I came back and I had missed the whole free speech movement year. And the whole world at Berkeley had changed. But I was getting attention. I'm so sorry, getting attention for my etchings. And so I started exhibiting and showing them more. These are mostly 22 by 30 or 30 by 30, and the color is added with acrylic. Next slide. Then I had a kid, and the toys were in my studio even when she was at childcare. So I started making art about what was around me. And these etchings are about the same size. The bottom right is a drawing, and they have also the color in watercolor and acrylic. Next slide. I loved etching, but I was finding that the rectangular shape of most of the plates felt binding. And I guess I was still thinking about breaking out, although I didn't know it. So I made these complicated collages of rope, and then I photographed them and put them on photo etching plates. And then I printed them in black and white, and then I drew all over them so I could expand the ropes out into the existing space around the plate. And I worked on ropes for 3 years. This is called, what one is this called? This one is called, I don't know. It's called something. Okay, next slide. I also did silk screens on canvas and then black and white, and then painted and drew all over them. This is a painting 6 feet high by 5 feet wide. And my gallery dealer told me, you cannot show it unstretched, which is how I wanted to show it. Right after that, everyone was doing that. So I realized timing is everything, and being ahead of the curve is not always the best way to go. Next slide. One sec here. Okay. So this was the last series of the rope paintings, and I did kind of a conceptual circle because I Xeroxed images of famous paintings of women, mostly nudes, from art history. And then I printed those on whatever you printed on at the time, Xerox. And then I pasted them onto rag paper and painted a gold frame. So they went all the way back to a fine art image. Next slide. So I had a bad experience with a gallery, and I was getting really sick of galleries and the way they treated artists. I love the art, I love the artists, but I hated the galleries. And a friend of mine had been bugging me to get into media. And my second child was not interested in being toilet trained. So someone sent me this book called How to Toilet Train Your Child in Less Than a Day. And it seemed really militaristic. So I got a hold of some training films from the Navy, but I didn't have a projector. So my drawing class and I watched training films so I could learn how to make this film. I went to the head of the film department at CCA where I was teaching, and he said, well, you can't borrow the equipment. You don't know what you're doing, but make it sound funny and some students will come and help you. So I did. I got an actress who was toilet trained so she wouldn't be traumatized, and someone to play her mother. And I set up in the kitchen, and they came over, the two guys, and they looked around and they said, we got to go. So they left the equipment, and my husband knew how to use a light meter. So I shot this film over 3 weekends. And when I went to show it to the head of the film department, he said, well, you've made a training film. You didn't make a satire on a training film. And a light bulb went off. And making this film was so freeing because I did not know what I was doing. I had never taken a film class, and it was so much fun. And I realized that the weight of the canon that I had been taught, mostly white male European artists, had been weighing down my brush, and it totally changed my art life forever. So I had a screening, and people laughed right where I wanted them to. And I thought, this is fantastic. And I was hooked. Next slide. So I made a whole bunch of short films. And this is a one called Juggling. And Sue White of the Mutants played my alter ego as a photographer trying to juggle her career and motherhood. Next slide. So then I got a video camera, and I thought, well, what do you do with a video camera? You do interviews. So I started doing interviews with artists. And one group of artists were performance artists mostly from the punk world. And working at Julie's Hotline was their day job, where they did sex calls. So this is a still from that video. And I had made them these pink hoods so they'd be anonymous. Next slide. So I had this partner, Joe Reese, who's Joe Target of Target Video. And he was videotaping all the punk bands in San Francisco. And I was often second camera, and we shared editing space in his loft. And so I got to know the punk scene. It was lively, it was fun. I went out at night by myself and took back the night, as I had not done when I was younger. But anyway, most of the bands were boys, and they all had boy names like the Circle Jerks. So I decided to make a girl band, and my band was called Connie and the Cocksuckers. However, so I had a poster made with some models and a press release, but I couldn't afford to make a demo tape because back then it wasn't like now with computers, and it cost a whole lot of money to make a demo tape. So I had this press release and a poster, and I got orders from all over the world. It was pretty funny. Next slide. So I was teaching at CCA, and I started teaching a class for painters and drawers on how to use digital tools. And there was no good printers, and everything was made in disappearing ink, and it was really the beginning. But I started making these little they were like little icons. They were 12 by 12 with collage and these Xeroxes stuck on. And I made them to show my students things that you might be able to do with digital tools. And I made so many of them that I went out and got a gallery in San Francisco. I always made art, and taught art, but I didn't show art for over a decade. And then I started again. Next slide. So I started making these documentaries I made following my arc, the arc of my life. So I made one on menopause and male menopause. And then I made one on the baby boomers and cosmetic surgery called Younger, Thinner, Smoother. And this is a still from that. Lately, I've been making films about older women who have been mentors to me, like Bella Feldman and Edith Hillinger, and Penny Cooper, a renowned criminal defense attorney, who is also a collector of art by women. Next slide. That's Penny. Next. So about over a decade ago, I started going to artist residencies. And the first one was to New Zealand. And there was this crazy thing that happened with the former owners of the site. And there was a big explosion that the army had to come and take care of. And when I came back, I made this large scale, it's like 60 by 55 photograph on canvas with chairs exploding. And the chairs were from a painting of my dining room chairs. It's called Boom. And there was a great story with it. And I decided to start including stories in the descriptions of my artwork. Next. When COVID hit, I was unable to go to any more residencies. So I made my own residency. I have a little cottage on the Russian River near the ocean. And as I wandered along the coast, I started thinking of the confluence and contradictions of the digital and natural world. And that led to a series called Crossing the Digital Divide. And this is another large scale work on canvas with acrylic paint. And it's number 7. Next slide. Right now I'm having, forgot to say. So while I was there doing these other things in COVID, I started making small ink on handmade paper with little sayings. And they just needed to be a meditation for me to get them out. And I expanded on them, and it turned into the show I'm currently having through November 26th at Mercury 20 Gallery on 25th Street in Oakland, called Mark My Words. And the poet Machine Wynn wrote poems for 6 of the images. Next slide. So here's one of the sorry. One of the pieces, Help Me Help You, with the poem that Machine Wynn wrote for that. Next slide. This is another piece from that series. Speak Up, Speak Out. Next slide. Shelley, can you make it move? And this is my first foray into neon. So this is a neon piece. And is there one more slide, Shelley? Yes, so this is an installation of the show. I'll be there Friday from 2:30 to 5. But I could meet you anytime because I have a key. Anyway, I hope you stop by and see the show. I'm very excited about it as it's my current work. And I also did a book of all the images. So thank you.
Thank you, Liz. That was great. I even enjoyed your coughing.
God help me.
And now we're going to turn the camera and the microphone over to Mary Curtis Ratcliff, unless anyone has something that you'd like to ask Liz beforehand. Anybody have a question or two while it's on your mind? Okay, I take
someone
that
has some.
wrong no. Okay, Mary Curtis Ratcliff.
Wait, one person has their hand up.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Hi, Pamela. I just was curious, Liz, when you showed that truck, it was a little bit out of focus or too small to see what the image and the text was on it that was driving by in that.
Oh, it's
One of your pieces?
it's something that I made up. It's a truck, and the name of the company is Let Artemisia Move You. And that's the name of the piece. Thank you.
Great.
Okay. Okay. Mary Curtis Ratcliff, who was one of the first artists that I met here, and next to Andre Singer Thompson. And she started her sculpture practice at the Rhode Island School of Design. But soon after she graduated, she moved, as many people did, to New York City. And in New York City, she became a founding member of the pioneering video collective called Video Freaks. And they made experimental counterculture videos, video products from 1969 to 1978. And maybe we'll get her to talk a little bit about them. In 1973, Ratcliff left New York City for San Francisco Bay Area, where she resumed a series she had begun of two-dimensional works. She also began working in sculpture, in kinetic sculpture, in mixed media, in installations, embracing numerous new ideas and issues, but never without her guerrilla spirit. Mary Curtis.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me to be on the Artist Exchange. I appreciate this very much. I always made things my whole life, and I grew up with a mother who made all my clothes, which was really amazing. And through that, I became aware of fabrics and color and pattern and design. So ever since I was a little kid, I was making things, and here it is many decades later, and I'm still making things, and I can't seem to stop. Anyway, I painted and drew with my brother and went to a private art teacher when I was in like 4th, 5th, 6th grade. And I also learned to knit by the time I was in 6th grade. When I was 7, I got my first camera. It was a little brownie camera that you held. It had a little strap around the neck, and you look down into it. And one of my first two-dimensional pieces was the image that I took with my little brownie camera at age 7. So I've been messing around with photography for a long time. I went to the Rhode Island School of Design and graduated in 1967. I had actually wanted to go in, I was majoring in sculpture, but wanted to go into the industrial design department. But in 1966, they didn't want any women in there. So I was discouraged, and I went into the art education department, and it actually helped me earn a living teaching art to children for probably about off and on for about 25 years. When I went to New York, I was one of 3 founding members of the collective Video Freaks. And there were 3 of us initially. 2 of the people, oh, thank you. First slide. Yeah, there I am with a Video Freaks camera and my granny glasses, being a full tilt boogie hippie, which was really fun. This is 1969. And we were given a lot of money from CBS to go all over the country and document the avant-garde movement of the late 60s. So we went to Chicago, talked to Fred Hampton, Abby Hoffman. We came out to California, and I looked around and I said, oh, this is where I'm going to escape to. And that's exactly what I did. I came back to, oh, next slide, please. Here is poster for the film that was made of our collective called Here Come the Video Freaks. It's really fun and I recommend it. You can just Google Here Come the Video Freaks and you can laugh a lot. Anyway, next slide, please. And I was part of the publicity for the Freaks. I am there in the left-hand side with very long hair. And I think I spoke about, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 times at various venues around the country about the film and about my experience being a video freak. Then when I came to the Bay Area, next slide, please. I had to remember something. I said, wait a minute. I'm no longer in Manhattan. I'm no longer running around with a video camera. Didn't I go to art school? Oh, I did go to art school. What did I major in? Oh, sculpture. So I said, okay, I'm going to start making sculptures. So this was one of the very first pieces I made. It's called Hollywood Car Wash. And it's about 12 feet high. And it has Japanese ribbon. I hardly had any money, so I went down to Cost Plus and bought these huge spools of these colored ribbons and made this kinetic sculpture. So this is this actually is the first kinetic sculpture I made in 1973. Next, please. And here's another one called Silver Lady. It's made out of mylar. And it was at the Palace of Fine Arts here. It was the symbol for Lynn Hirschman's yeah, the floating museum, right? And Lynn Hirschman's floating museum, and it was, I put it around at the Palace of Fine Arts and at the Legion of Honor to symbolize the floating museum. Next slide, please. I continued doing kinetic sculpture, but I changed the medium and it went into fabric. And this is actually rayon ribbon. This is one of a series of 5 sculptures, and this one is called Passkeys. So it's each hoop is suspended from the ceiling with monofilament, and it turns in space. And this is a theme you'll see in my current work. I'm still working with the idea of kinetic work and interacting with the shadows. Next, please. Then I got into a series of about 7 large sculptures. This is 6 feet high. And it's called Josephine, and it's a commemorative piece to Josephine Baker, who really was one of my heroines. And I thought she had incredible courage. And I actually saw something in Paris when I was quite young. That was similar to I can't remember, it was a burlesque show, but anyway, they had feathers and glitter and all sorts of things. So this was one of the 7 pieces that I did about that turned into kind of a goddess series in the early 90s. Next, please. I did a number of other smaller sculptures because I was running out of room. You know, we artists always have a problem with storage space. And although I was selling some things, I still was running out of room. And I actually went in 1997 to a residency, my first residency, that was encouraged by a friend and mentor and artist, Helene Elan, said, you'll love it there. You'll just love it. You must go. So I went to the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. And I started doing 2-dimensional work at that point, which the 2-dimensional work lasted for almost 20 years. And this is one of the first pieces I did. You can see in the upper left-hand corner and lower left, and then on the right-hand side, images that were taken in New Orleans, which I transferred onto the paper. This piece actually is quite large. It's 40 inches high by 60 inches wide. So I transferred, and then I did other transfers and collage and paint and graphite and oil pencil. And I continued to do this for a while. Next slide, please. This is another large piece that has 5 of my photographs in it, transferred in. Initially, the circular forms were from a photograph that I took in Maine in a Zen garden. Then I transferred the birds on the left and the right, and then the tree branch on top after having painted it with acrylic. This piece is 80 inches wide by 30 inches high. Next, please. Here's another mixed media work on paper, and they're all mounted actually on wooden panels. The original image in this is a wake from a boat in Alaska. And then I added the 2 chandeliers in the bottom right, and they were from a church in France. And then I said, well, wait a minute, I need another chandelier. So because I photograph things in series, I had a lot of chandeliers. So I picked this one from the Central Cafe in Vienna. And it was really, really fun to paint that in. Okay, next, please. Then after that, I started doing mixed media works on paper. And this is one of the kinetic works. Each of these 3 circular elements are suspended with monofilament, and they turn in space. And again, we have the interaction of the shadow. This is called Jellies, and I did it I don't know, in 2006 or 7. And the photographs are from the jellies from the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And then there's a tree branch that was taken probably up in Sonoma County when I lived up there on a ranch for about 6.5 years. Next, please. Here are some, these are actually are printed directly onto a vinyl material. So they're digital inkjet prints, and I didn't add anything to them. But again, I'm using the element of shadows and negative space. This one is called Koi. Next, please. This one is called Technicolor Trees, and it again has the shadows and overlapping shadows, and then on plexiglass. So again, these are elements that are turning in space, and then they have interacting shadows as they're layered, and they turn and they layer on top of each other, which I find really interesting. Next, please. This is a piece that I did for a solo show, again, in Mercury 20 Gallery. I've been a member there for about 13 years, I believe. And it's the largest one. It's 12 feet wide by 7 feet high by 7 feet deep. And I took this photograph. It must have been from a sailboat. I can't remember taking it, but anyway, I took it and I cut out various parts of it and put it on the different discs. Now, this turns in space, and so I realized quite quickly, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to do exactly the same thing on the other side. So it was a lot of work, this piece. It has the same images on the back side as well. Okay. Next, please. And then for my latest show, which is in June and July of this past year, I decided to take the elements of suspension, and instead of suspending from 3 separate points, I would suspend from 1 point and then attach the things going down, getting smaller and smaller and smaller in this case. This piece is called Frondangle, and it's made with plexiglass, and on top of the plexiglass is alcohol ink pens, which was a new medium for me. I'd never used those. And they're a lot easier to use than the alcohol ink that comes in a bottle. And I'll have another example of that in a minute. But this was really fun. And I understand there's going to be 180 colors of alcohol ink pens coming out in February or so of 2023. So I'm very eager to get my hands on a few more colors. Next, please. And here is another kinetic sculpture, very recent, called Aquarium. And in the background, you do see the alcohol ink that came out of a bottle, but it was very frustrating for me because I couldn't get it to do the same thing twice. So I just winged it, you know, I just messed around till I got what I wanted. And I'm trying to cast colored shadows here. And you can, in this slide, you don't really see it, but it actually does cast a fairly good, faint, although faint, colored shadow. The fish are actually made with a medium called Pabio, which is made in France. And it's for the decoration of wine glasses, but it's, again, a transparent medium. I did a lot of experimenting to try to figure out how to make colored shadows. And then I think we have the last slide, which is an installation shot of my last show at Mercury 20 Gallery called Casting Shadows. On the right, you can see a good example of my favorite fish, which was a fighting fish, I believe. I can't remember the name of it, a beta or something like that. Anyway, that was really fun to paint, all those scales and all those tails and things. And then the big one just to the right of left of that is a very large piece called Skylight, and it's 48 inches wide on 3/8 inch plexiglass. And it also turns in space, and it was digitally printed at a company called Local Language, which is also on 25th Street. And then you see other things on the left, smaller works, and you see the shadows. I was very lucky to have the husband of one of our members help me to light the show. He did a great job. So that is it.
Well, thank you, Mary Curtis.
You're
That's
welcome.
great.
That was fun.
Oh yeah, both of you included a few pieces that we did not see when we did our dress rehearsal, so that was really exciting to have that. And I have a million questions to ask you both myself, but I won't be a pig. And I think the best thing to do would be to let you ask each other what you will.
Okay, so
I just want to mention, I just put your links in the chat, Mary Curtis.
Thank you very much. And I have actually, I'm on Wikipedia page too, just, you know, Mary Curtis Ratcliff .wikipedia.
I think that due to the time where we are, we're going to combine our artists asking questions with the audience asking questions. So it's kind of a question free for all.
Okay.
Were you going to ask a question, Mary Curtis?
I was going to ask a question to Elizabeth about the punk scene, because I'm just, you know, I never went to any punk concerts, and I always thought they were really kind of scary or something like that. And I was really happy to get your take on them, that they were actually quite fun. And so my question was, what motivated you to do it? You're muted. You're muted.
Right. Okay. So I had this equipment partner, Joe Reese, and he was all into it and he got me started. And then I met a lot of the mutants who had all gone to CCA. And so they were a great fun band. A lot of them were artists from the Art Institute and CCA. But I started wanting to look like I knew what was going on. So I started going to the Mabuhay and checking it out. Plus I was shooting for Joe sometimes. So I was in the Mabuhay and other sites being second camera for him. And it was just really lively, back to basic music. And, you know, they were cutting out little letters for the typeface for their posters. And it was very friendly. I was about 10 years older than most of them. And they would say, like, do you like the music, ma'am? You know, it's hilarious. But Bruce Connor, who was another mentor to me, was 10 years older than I was. And he was all in it. So I thought, well, if Bruce is doing it, I can do it. And that's how I got to know a whole lot of these people. And then my husband thought I'd had a midlife crisis, but I finally got him to go to the Mabuhay with me. And we saw Black Flag. And they had the it was a Filipino restaurant or something like that. And after they closed down, that's when the punks bands would come. And they pushed the tables and they'd run down the tables and jump into the mosh pit and dance. And he thought it was the greatest thing. So then he understood.
Good. I'm glad Phil got it. Yeah.
He did.
I want to
And I'm
mention,
still friendly with a whole bunch of these wonderful creative people.
Great.
there's a question for Mary Curtis from Kim Thoman. She says, do you want to mention your interest in supporting healthcare workers with your work?
Oh, thank you. Yes. Thanks, Kim. Good question. Yes, the Kinetic Works that I started maybe 6 or 7 years ago inspired me to, because I looked at them and I watched them turn in space very quietly and slowly. I felt that they have a calming effect on, and so I thought, well, where could I put them? You know, and I thought, well, if I could get them into healing environments like hospitals or clinics or something like that, then they might be of use, you know, to people who are totally nervous. And if they could stop long enough to tune in, and it might take their, you know, blood pressure down a little bit. And so I have been trying, so far unsuccessfully, to give this gift to these institutions. And they're all these gatekeepers, and they're basically called art consultants. And so I'm signed up with a number of them, but I have yet to get any of my work into any kind of healing environment like that. So I'm still trying, and I will continue to try, because I still think that they could have a positive effect on health settings.
Any other questions out there from anyone?
I have a question for Mary Curtis.
Yes.
Do you think your video work in any way still influences the work you're doing in your sculpture and 2D work?
Well, it's all part of this same kind of thing, because as I said earlier, I've always had a camera in my hand, either a still camera. And so when I grabbed a video camera in 1969, it was still images. They just were moving images. And so it was very natural for me. So I just basically stayed behind the camera for 3.5 years and shot video. And then when I came out here, it's been more recent, maybe the last, I don't know how many, 20 years or something, or 25 years, I've been using images in my work. All my work in the last number of years starts with a photograph. And then I work it into the composition, and I add all sorts of other media, paint, graphite stuff. And so but I had a really interesting experience quite recently. My husband and I, Peter Samus and I, went to France and went to Rouen and talked to a family member and about her experiences in World War II. And I just used this little, my little iPhone, and I'd never taken any video with an iPhone before. I'd just taken still shots, and these things work really well. And so now I have not even a camera this size, just this little thing will take and make a good video. And I also have an idea for an installation at Mercury 20 in about a year and a half, where I will make an environment where I'll project images onto the walls. And that will be, all that will be taken with this camera, the images.
I know. I remember carrying a big orange JVC camera and a porta pack.
Oh yeah, wow, that's heavy stuff.
It was a lot easier now.
Yeah, much.
Well, I'd like to ask one academic question, take us out of the fun realm. And that's, it seems that teaching is very important, was very important to both of you, both as a way of life and who knows, maybe a way of learning things. Do you agree with me about that? And what did teaching mean to you?
Oh, I definitely do. I think I learned more from my students than they learned from me. They also gave me great hope for the future, all these creative young people going into something where they didn't know what was going to happen, although there is more work for visual artists today than there used to be. Used to be a carpenter, but now you can be lots of things. And they were stimulating and fun. I taught at CCA for 34 years, but before that I taught at Sac State and the Academy of Art. So I actually taught college students for 40 years.
Wow.
Then it was funny. Bella Feldman said she walked onto the CCA campus one day and said, I don't want to teach anymore. And that's when she knew to be done. And the same thing happened to me. I walked on campus and said, I think I'm done. Turn it over to the next generation. But it was a wonderful opportunity. The sexist ladder I had to climb to become a full professor was more of a fight, but I won. But the students were great. And it was funny because when I came to CCA, the women had actually a lot higher profiles career-wise, but the men ran everything. And it was really an old boys club. So the women, we made a ladies auxiliary, and we met once a month on Saturday and compared notes. And we were a great support for each other, which we really, really needed. So that was a good environment. I made some friends in the faculty too.
Yeah, well, I taught children, and I really didn't want to, I don't know. I just like children. I don't have any of my own, so I borrow other people's. So I, for 25 years, I taught in New York and Oakland and San Francisco and Providence during, learning how to be a teacher. And I just love kids' work. I mean, it just really is so refreshing. And I got really good at it. And my last job was at the East Bay French American School, which was really a fascinating place for about 5 years. And there were kids from all over the world in those classes. And I taught basically 2nd through 8th grade. Now, getting the attention of the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders was a little bit of a challenge. They were so into each other that I could hardly get their attention. But anyway, never mind. I had a good time, and it was a French school, accredited by the French government, actually, and therefore they understood the value of art. And I really appreciated that, because when I first got to San Francisco, I went over to the art education department, and said, how do I get a credential teaching art in California? And they said, oh, don't bother. There's no art in the elementary schools in California. I thought, what? Anyway, I did all sorts of things, but I ended up in a really good environment.
Great.
So I see that my old pal, Melissa Burke, had her hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
Do have a question for Curtis, if I can get it out, a little complicated. It's about your work. And I was struck by your more recent work where you definitely are working with the kinetic aspect of your art. But as I looked at the shadows being cast beyond the movement, I'm reflecting on what I know to be your background in photography. And I'm thinking of your dad as a photographer. I'm thinking of those shadows as the negatives from pictures.
Huh. That's
And I'm beginning to wonder what you may be wanting to evolve in regard to the shadows, as well as the really incredible, intricate work you've done on your hanging sculptures. Have you been drawn in any way to what can happen in the shadow realm?
Well, yes, I have, and I keep designing sculptures that have negative parts to them, so that light can go through and cast shadows, and that becomes part of the work. So instead of, if I have 3 elements that are hanging, and then it's lit correctly, actually from a 45-degree angle this way and a 45-degree angle this way, then it's casting not only 3 other shadows, but 6 shadows.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they start interacting with each other. And that, to me, gets really interesting.
Yeah, it's a multidimensional. I was just curious how much you were beginning to move into the shadows, as it were, Curtis.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I actually, the piece that really tuned me into it was Technicolor trees, the one of the very sparse tree branches, because
Yes,
it was
that's
mostly
very beautiful.
negative. Yeah, it was mostly negative space, and just
Uh-huh.
I picked out. I had a blast picking out the wildest colors I could imagine, and so then that cast the shadows, and then they became overlapping.
Right.
And so that was one of those happy accidents in art, where you don't know what you're doing until you put it up there and look at it, and then you see, oh my gosh, something else is happening, and then you
Right.
trip off that one.
Exactly. Wonderful. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, gentle people. I would love to have this go on and turn into a slumber party, and each of us bring our own tools. But unfortunately, we're running out of time. So I'd really like to thank Liz Sher and Mary Curtis Ratcliff, and of course my friend Shelley Rudd, and all of you who came. I hope that you will enjoy us and will come back again. One of the things, there are a couple of things, I'll let Shelley talk about some of it, and I'll blab over the rest of it. We have decided that we're going to give everybody December off. Shelley is moving, I am traveling, a lot of things are happening, but when we return, Nancy Lemoyne will be one of our artists, and I think Sophia Lee will be the other one, but we are very open to suggestions. And if you feel that you yourself would like to be on the program, that would be great. And although we are feminists, so we really like men too. So if there are men that you know who would enjoy being on the program and would love it, please tell them. Miss Shelley, what do you got to say?
You're muted.
I wanted to mention that, Usually after we have our artists talk about their work, and everyone asks questions, we talk about opportunities for artists, and we like to share things that are happening in the area that people can connect with. And I know, Pamela, you had an idea for something you wanted to share.
Yes, a couple of things. One, as a happy accident, I ran into a network online, the SF Artists Network, and it's all kinds of opportunities to show and to see things. And I think, did you help me put that up on?
Oh, I can pop it in there right now.
That would be great. That would
And
be
I
great.
just want to mention, because I
Pick the
see
brains.
people are starting to leave. If you want to get on our email list, just pop your email address into the chat, and then we can add you to our email list.
Tony.
I just want to mention that Gallery Route 1, the artist members, board members, and Shelley as staff have a show at the Maroon Civic Center right now that runs through February 3rd. So I hope you get a chance to come see it.
Yeah, awesome.
I
And
just,
then-
I just put my website and Instagram address into the chat.
Awesome.
Thank
Okay. And more stuff. There's so much going on at the gallery right now. We have 4 exhibitions that are opening this Saturday. If you can come out to the reception, that would be awesome. We always do a video walkthrough though, so you can check that out once it's posted to our website. The shows are, oh, I thought I had it written down, but anyway, it's Will Tom's in the center gallery. One of our newest artist members, Ellen Vogel, in our little annex gallery. And in the project space gallery, we have a special exhibition of a founding artist member, Betty Woolfolk, who passed away several years ago. And we got our hands on a collection of her work. So we're selling those to raise money for the gallery. And we are combining that with a small work show by our artist members. And we are looking for more artist members. So I will put a link in the chat for that as well. If you're interested, you can apply. The deadline is December 31st for that. And we also have a juried show that you can apply to. The deadline is December 2nd.
And I jumped in on you, Shelley, sorry. But I think that we, as you probably know, we're a nonprofit. And so if you just have a wad of cash sitting around somewhere and throwing it at an arts organization, we're here.
Wrote it there.
I'm putting a link so that it makes it really easy if you want to make a donation.
Could you remind us the name of your channel to subscribe to? You're on YouTube here?
Yes, we're on, our channel is Gallery Route 1.
Okay.
So it should be fairly easy to find if you type in Gallery Route 1.
I want to say one other thing. I'm doing a podcast for Mercury 20 Gallery, and I've done 6, and we're starting a 7th. It's called 2 Close to the Sun. And it's anywhere you get your podcasts. There's also a link on the Mercury 20 site, but Apple, Sketcher, everywhere they have it. And it's usually several gallery artists with an outside guest and different themes. So the last one was art and community. There was one on photography. So they're about 20 minutes long. I'm a ruthless editor, so they move along really fast. And I hope you'll take a listen. The number 2, I'll put it in, but it's 2 Close to the Sun.
And they're really good.
Thank you. And just one more mention is on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, we have an artist exchange group. So we also announce all of our artist exchange programs in that Facebook group. And we'd love to have you all join that. All right. Well, thank
Amen.
you, everyone, for coming this evening. And then, like Pamela said, if you're interested in presenting as an artist at a future Artist Exchange event, please send an email to pamelablotner@gmail.com. And if you were moved by today's presentation and want to support the work that Gallery Route 1 does to inspire people to experience the world in new ways, then click on the link in the chat and select Community Outreach Donations and then Artists Exchange. All right, that was wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. Thank you to our artists
Thank you.
Thank you.
and Pamela,
Michelle.
champion
Thank you.
artist wrangler.
I like that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone.
And please come back. We're here.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.